If you're listening to this, you're probably trying to stay ahead of the curve on cyber defense. And for years, that meant, obsessing over your own perimeter, your firewalls, your staff. But if 2025 taught us anything, it's that the front door isn't really the strategic focus anymore. The real battle now is about the weaponization of trust.
That's the core vulnerability today. It really is. When we analyze the data, the scale of the problem is just. It's startling. Sources are confirming that 30% of all data breaches now involve a third party.
30%. And that's a 100% increase from the previous year.
A complete doubling in just 1 year.
And these are not cheap mistakes, are they? The global average cost of a breach is sitting at, what, $4.44 million?
It is. And that number is driven up precisely because these third-party compromises are so hard to detect.
And to contain.
Right. What's driving that cost and complexity is the systemic lack of visibility. Most organizations depend on thousands of external software components.
Libraries, services, you name it.
Exactly. So when attackers exploit that trusted connection, they just bypass defenses that were supposed to be ironclad. It moves the risk from an event you can plan for to, a systemic crisis.
So our mission today is to give you the strategic intelligence you need to navigate this shift. We are doing a deep dive into the new front lines of cybersecurity, the digital supply chain. We're focusing on exactly what you need to do to move from just preventing attacks to building true, resilient defense.
And that transition, moving from reaction to resilience, that requires a deep strategic commitment, oversight, and, most importantly, informed investment. We're dedicating this deep dive to delivering that intelligence. And we are proud to be supported by www.quantumsecurity.ai and www.cisomarketplace.com, two essential resources focused on modern security and CISO decision-making.
Okay, let's unpack the threat landscape we saw solidify in 2025. Nation-state intensity drove some major disruption, and when you look at sheer volume and boldness, well, China-linked espionage was certainly leading the way.
It was a very aggressive year. The attacks we saw tied to the group known as Salt Typhoon, they were far more extensive than initially reported.
You're talking about an offensive that specifically targeted major U.S. telecom firms. Verizon, AT&T, Charter, Windstream. The list goes on. This wasn't a minor incident. I mean, U.S. officials called it the worst telecom hack in U.S. history.
And what's crucial for you to understand is the method. They weren't just hitting firewalls. They were operating inside networks, undetected, for months.
Oh.
By exploiting known weaknesses, especially in unmanaged cloud devices, the kind of thing organizations often lack visibility into. This directly led to cloud intrusion surging by 136% in just the first half of 2025. And Chinese actors were responsible for 40% of that increase. It really proves that blind spots in the cloud are the new strategic high ground for adversaries.
And beyond that sort of traditional espionage, we saw this massive spike in sophisticated social engineering, using generative AI to weaponize identity.
Oh, this is a worrying trend. North Korea-linked actors,
Yeah.
famous Shalima, they use Gen AI not just for better phishing emails, but to fabricate entire professional identities.
So resumes, portfolios.
And even deepfake video interviews to gain fraudulent employment.
Get out. So think about that risk. They weren't just guessing a password. They were getting past HR, past hiring managers, and getting a legitimate digital foothold inside a company as a trusted employee. They infiltrated over 320 companies in 12 months. That's a 220% spike.
It just shows that Gen AI is being deployed as a core enabler in modern espionage. The cost of human verification is becoming almost impossible.
And at the same time, the motive for attacks like ransomware has been shifting.
Yes, it's moving away from simple cash grabs toward strategic destabilization. Half a full 50% of all ransomware incidents in 2025 targeted critical sectors.
Manufacturing, healthcare, energy.
Transportation, finance, all of them. And manufacturing saw the steepest growth, right, a 61% surge.
Right. You saw attacks on facilities like Jaguar Land Rover and Bridgestone. They weren't just about demanding Bitcoin. They were aimed at a pressure point.
A pressure point that destabilizes global supply chains.
Exactly.
Look, when a company's production line stops for 48 hours, the financial ripple effects for suppliers, for logistics, for customers, they're massive. Attackers know they get exponentially more leverage by targeting operations than they do by just stealing a database.
Which brings us back to defining the problem.
Yeah.
If we're going to defend against it, we have to be really clear on the distinction between a third-party breach and a supply chain attack.
Yes, this is so important. A third-party breach is when your vendor gets hacked. That's an event. A supply chain attack is a methodology. It involves using that compromised vendor's existing, pre-approved digital access,
Yeah.
their inherent trust, to attack you, the customer. It flips the whole security paradigm on its head.
And the definitive example, the one that really broke the industry's understanding of trust, has to be SolarWinds.
SolarWinds is the masterclass in supply chain compromise. The whole life cycle, orchestrated by Cozy Bear. It began in late 2019. But the attack really became operational when the Trojanized UnburST code was inserted into the legitimate Orion software update in March 2020.
And what made it so effective was that the code was digitally signed with a valid SolarWinds certificate, right?
Precisely. Everyone trusted it. So they weaponized the trusted build system itself. The software was delivered through the normal channel, looking completely illegitimate to any network monitor.
And that's why it went undetected for a staggering 9 months.
9 months. Impacting around 18,000 customers. The result was a global average revenue hit of 11% for those companies.
And the fallout went beyond just the money. We saw the regulatory response start to bite when the SEC initially filed charges against the SolarWinds CISO, Timothy Brown. Now, that case was later dropped in late 2025, but that initial action, it still signaled a watershed moment.
Oh, it absolutely did. That precedent is now permanent. Executive accountability is tied directly to how you disclose your risk posture. Whether charges stick or not, a security executive's role now carries personal liability for systemic failures, especially with supply chain risk.
And we've seen similar cascading failures, like the 3CX compromise that started with one vendor, Trading Technologies, getting hit. Then an employee at 3CX downloaded their Trojanized software, which let the attackers pivot and poison 3CX's own build environment. The compromise just cascaded down to all of their customers.
And that leads us right to the ultimate nightmare scenario. Open source. 70 to 90% of modern applications rely on open source components. The XE-utils saga, which was so narrowly averted, just shows how fragile that foundation is.
Can you explain the XE-utils risk? Because the story behind that incident is just incredible.
It was a multi-year, highly patient social engineering campaign. An actor built trust in the open source community, got himself in as a maintainer, and then planted a sophisticated, deeply obfuscated backdoor into XE-utils.
Which is a fundamental Linux compression library. It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. The compromise was set to deploy globally.
And it was averted by sheer chance.
By the thinnest of margins. The backdoor was so well hidden, automated scanners would never have flagged it. It was only stopped because a single developer, who was focused on performance, noticed a tiny anomaly, a 2-millisecond slowdown in a routine function. That tiny, almost imperceptible delay saved the internet. It just highlights the profound hidden danger lurking in our dependencies.
So if we connect all these failures, SolarWinds, 3CX, XE-utils, they all expose the same fatal flaw of the old perimeter model?
They do. And so the only strategic solution to this weaponization of trust is a complete architectural shift to zero trust.
We hear the term zero trust architecture, or ZTA, constantly. For a security leader, what's the key strategic implication here, beyond just the NIST definition?
Well, the NIST standard, SP 800-207, defines it as never trust, always verify. But the strategic implication is that you're abandoning the concept of a safe internal network. You have to treat every connection, every device, every user as if they're on a hostile external network. It's the only way to manage multi-cloud, remote work, and especially compromised vendors.
So if that old perimeter is gone, what are the core operational principles that ZT demands?
It really boils down to 3 pillars that have to be continuously enforced. First, continuous verification. Every person, every device, every service has to be continuously authenticated and authorized. This is the hard part for a lot of organizations.
Right, and that continuous verification hits a wall when you have identity sprawl. Too many accounts, too many unmanaged devices.
Exactly. Industry analysis shows that 80% of zero trust failures are not technological, they're cultural. These stem from identity chaos. Second, you need least privilege access. You get the absolute minimum access required to do your job. No permanent admin keys, no legacy access.
And finally, minimizing the blast radius.
That's the third pillar. You do that with microsegmentation. You create tight, watertight compartments across your infrastructure. So if an attacker breaches one segment, say the finance app, they're immediately stopped from moving laterally to the manufacturing system. When you assume attackers are already inside, the goal shifts from prevention to containment.
That containment strategy requires full transparency, which brings us to the software bill of materials, the SBOM. For years, this was a niche request. Now, transparency is non-negotiable.
An SBOM is really just a detailed, machine-readable inventory of all the ingredients in your software libraries, dependencies, versions, licenses, usually formatted as SPDX or Cyclone-X.
And the regulatory drivers for this are immense now. The U.S. executive order mandated them. Globally, the 2025 certain guidelines in India, especially for fintech, have made SBOMs auditable artifacts. This isn't optional anymore.
And the operational value, I think, far outweighs the compliance burden. And SBOM gives you a foundational asset register, but its key goal is integration with VEX.
Let's clarify VEX because that's the strategic secret sauce here.
Right. Think of VEX Vulnerability Exploitability Exchange as the smart triage nurse for your software list. When a big vulnerability like Log4j hits, your SBOM might show 10,000 components with that library. But VEX analyzes your application context and tells you only the 50 components where that vulnerability is actually exploitable, where an attacker can reach it.
That ability to filter out the noise is the difference between panic and a focused response.
Precisely. It shortens triage time from weeks of chaos to minutes of focused remediation. You stop patching everything and focus only on what's a real, reachable threat.
So this raises a huge question for you, the security leader. How do you actually operationalize this resilience?
You need a formal playbook, and that playbook is NIST SP 800-161 Revision 1, the Cybersecurity Supply Chain Risk Management Practices, or CSCRM.
And CSCRM isn't just a compliance checklist. It forces the organization to integrate risk thinking at every single level.
That's right. It mandates a multi-level approach. Level 1 is enterprise strategy and governance setting policy at the board level. Level 2 is the mission and business context, how finance or manufacturing must adhere to that policy. And level 3 is the system and operational implementation, the ground floor work, generating SBOMs and implementing zero trust.
The strategic challenge here is connecting those three levels. That's where a lot of organizations fail, isn't it? Trying to build an operational system without that board-level governance.
Absolutely. The bridge between those levels is high-quality, auditable documentation. It's the scaffolding that makes CSTRM credible. If you can't prove your process, your compliance assessments will fail.
And given the sheer scale of the threats, I mean, over 512,000 malicious open source packages logged in one-year leaders have to lean on next-gen tooling.
The tooling ecosystem requires layered defenses, especially on the AppSec side. You need SAS to analyze the code your developers write. But critically, you need software composition analysis, SCA, to manage the risk from all those open source libraries.
And we can't forget the easiest breach vector of all, developer secrets.
Exactly. Secret scanning is a necessity now. We saw secrets leaks jump 12% in 2024. Leaked API keys, database credentials. They are the keys to the kingdom for lateral movement.
The market is responding with some sophisticated automation, though. We're seeing AI-native application security platforms, for example, delivering twice as many real vulnerabilities with 75% fewer false positives. They're dramatically improving developer productivity by just cutting through the noise.
And beyond your own code, third-party risk management, or TPRM, has to evolve. The 2025 best practice moved entirely away from static annual vendor questionnaires. You need automated AI-driven risk assessment that continuously monitors a vendor's security posture in real time. You just can't afford to wait 12 months anymore.
And this holistic strategy, ZT, SBOMs, automated monitoring, it requires significant strategic investment and careful decision-making at the CISO level.
It does. Knowing exactly where to place your capital, whether it's in advanced future-proof solutions like those focusing on quantum-resistant security from a place like www.quantumsecurity.ai, or the precise compliance tooling you need for mandates like NIST 800-161. That's the challenge. Having reliable, centralized market intelligence is crucial. And that's exactly why resources like www.cisomarketplace.com are helping security leaders make those informed choices every day.
So to summarize what we've unpacked today, the risk surface has permanently expanded past the perimeter and deep into the software supply chain. Attackers are sophisticated, they are patient, and they are weaponizing the one thing modern business is built on: trust.
So the strategic goal for every organization has to shift from just preventing attacks to achieving resilience. That's the ability to detect, withstand, and rapidly recover with minimal business impact. And this resilience is achieved through zero trust, mandatory transparency via SBOMs, and a systematic framework like NIST TSC SCRM. It's no longer enough to trust your vendors, you have to verify them continuously.
We've talked a lot about the risk in open source, but let's remember the commercial side, the closed source binaries we all rely on. Analysis of these black box binaries has revealed what some researchers called 7 deadly sins: malware implantation, exposed secrets, tampered files, the hack of justice AV solutions, JAVS, which exposed sensitive justice systems, happened through a trusted commercial update.
That's a powerful point. You can have zero trust applied internally, but if you're reliant on commercial, closed-source software, even from vendors you trust implicitly, the ultimate question remains, how are you verifying the integrity of the binary files you install onto your network? What's your plan B when that trusted update is actually poisoned?
A compelling thought to mull over as you build your strategy for 2026. We hope this deep dive has provided you with the roadmap you need to navigate the shifting landscape. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting this exploration into essential defense strategies: www.quantumsecurity.ai and www.cisomarketplace.com. We'll see you next time.